There is a whole shift in terms of understanding perimenopause and menopause for women is a transition period into a time where we do step into our own power, where it can be a positive and impactful journey and process of transformation.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Before we dive into today's episode, I just want to give you a quick heads up. If you've been a listener before, you might notice a bit of a shift around here. I've rebranded the podcast to How to Trust Yourself. And while the name and focus are new, the goal is the same: to help you ditch the self-doubt, listen to your gut, and actually trust yourself to create the life you want. In the past, this podcast was about chronic pain recovery and mind-body healing. And while those topics will still come into the conversation, I'm now focusing on helping people like you tap into that inner guidance when you're finally ready to connect with your purpose and go after those goals you've been holding off on, whether it's because you're scared of getting burned out again, of triggering chronic symptoms, or beating yourself up when things don't go as planned. If that sounds like what you need right now, you're in the right place. In today's episode, I'm talking with Dr. Adrienne Stein, a board-certified naturopathic doctor on a mission to change the narrative around menopause. With over 20 years of experience treating thousands of women in perimenopause and menopause, Dr. Adrienne sheds light on the lack of resources and understanding many women face during this transition. She sees menopause not as a health condition, but as a pivotal opportunity for women to transform their health, step into their power, and embrace a new chapter of embodiment. It's a perspective you don't want to miss. Let's get into it. Adrienne, it's so awesome to see you again. I'm happy to get to spend another conversation with you. Thanks for being here on the podcast this time.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having me, Anna.
Oh, I would love it if you would introduce yourself to this audience by letting them know what it is that you do and who you help.
Sure. So, my name is Adrienne, and I am a naturopathic doctor of almost 20 years now. Actually, a little bit more than 20 years. It's amazing how time flies by.
Yeah.
So, in my practice, I see women one on one. And over the last, I'd say like 5 or 10 years, I've been transitioning to be really in the menopause space
Yeah.
and really helping women in terms of their symptoms as they're navigating this transition. And as I've gone deeper into this space, I've found that there is so much that I think needs to change.
Yeah.
And since it wasn't happening fast enough, I decided I needed to be part of that change.
Yes.
So, apart from one on one practice, I've actually expanded my reach, and I now work both online one on one as well as through a mastermind, serving ambitious, heart centered women who are struggling with the menopause transition. and helping them not just get on top of their symptoms, but to really understand that menopause is an initiation and how we approach it. If we find a way to work with this journey of menopause and not against it, can
Yeah.
really change our experiences.
I love that you said menopause is an initiation. I think you said that the first time we met, and I was like, I need to talk to this woman more. I love that you're talking about menopause, first of all, because even though it's getting finally talked about more, it's certainly not enough conversations or information are out there yet. And very few of those conversations that are out there are speaking about menopause in any kind of a positive light. So it was such a breath of fresh air meeting you and hearing that from you. And you already shared a little bit about what led you to this work in the professional realm. I'm curious if there's any story about what led you to this work and this mindset about menopause from your personal life. You and I are both in that stage of life, that age range of the perimenopause, menopause age.
Yes, absolutely. It actually all started through my own personal journey with perimenopause and then later menopause. And I think so prior to that, I was trained like all naturopaths in terms of treating menopause and thinking of it just like medical doctors do. It's just hot flashes. And
Yeah.
here's some remedies to help hot flashes. And then I went through perimenopause. And
Mm,
let me tell you, it was a lot more than hot flashes.
yeah.
So, yes, definitely hot flashes, which were every hour, waking me up all night long. It was such severe, extreme, like brain fog and fatigue. I secretly wondered if I actually had Alzheimer's, given I
Mm,
couldn't remember small things from day to day. Also, even like I remember a day in clinic where the receptionist that I've worked with for over 10 years, I just suddenly couldn't remember her name.
yeah.
I'm standing there, I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea what her name is. So that and inflammation and all of these physical symptoms, digestive symptoms. And at that time, I didn't actually realize this was all part of perimenopause because there is
Yeah.
more information out there now, thankfully, about like the constellation of symptoms that can occur because hormones affect every part of our body. So that led me to going on a deep dive. I went deep into functional medicine,
Yeah.
and I went deep into my own personal healing on a physical level.
Yeah.
And I found that my symptoms resolved by not treating the hormones specifically, but all the systems in my body that were struggling,
Mm,
which was really interesting. And I later fell into working with a wonderful woman who looks at menopause more in terms of the fact that it is, of course, a natural transition. We can talk
yeah.
more about this later. But the reason why symptoms are appearing are because of deeper imbalances. So I can
Yeah.
touch on that a little bit later. But what happened after, I was able to sleep again, my energy was back. I was actually feeling better than I had in decades,
Mm,
feeling fantastic. And that's when I was able to look a little bit deeper on the mental, emotional, spiritual side of this journey.
yes.
And there's a lot. Like I
Yeah.
I I definitely resonated with patients who'll ask me, "Is it normal to feel grief during
Mm,
this time?" I remember for about a year, I visually, like in my mind's eye, I suddenly had one foot in the grave and
yeah.
one foot in life. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, time is going so fast. And that sudden realization, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing what I want to do? And that led me to go deep and really look at who I wanted to serve and how I wanted to serve, I could see suddenly that, like, although I love my one-on-one practice, it wasn't what I was going to do for the next 10 or 15 years. There was something bigger I'm supposed to do and to deliver in this world.
So I'm relating to a lot of what you're sharing. And what's
Mhm.
interesting is that although I am in the age range of perimenopause, I'm 47 right now. Um, I I don't think I've begun to experience many of the symptoms yet. I'm not so, I don't know if that means that it hasn't really fully started yet. However, at the life stage I'm at, and just also being in a related similar field to you, and being also a seeker who's, when I experience discomfort, my instinct is to look inward, like what's going on here. And so there were many things I related to. It's interesting. Um, Earlier you were saying menopause is an initiation, and I was like, so interesting. The thing that initially brought me into the work I've been doing for the past 5 years with helping people with chronic pain to recover, the thing that brought me into it was my own pain. And that pain served as this initiation into, like, I'd been someone who went to therapy for years and years and years and read a lot of self-help books and all that stuff. But that pain brought me so much deeper into this journey of self-connection. And then when you said, um, what was it? That uh, the symptoms are a signal of deeper imbalances. Similarly, I discovered that the headaches, and not only the headaches, but all sorts of, different signals from my body were were signals of an imbalance, and not just an imbalance in my body, but usually in my life, oftentimes in my career or in something in a relational dynamic. Um, and I'm curious for you, when you say menopause is an initiation into what?
The second half of our adult life,
Mm,
because menopause, perimenopause, menopause happens at around midlife. And midlife
yeah.
is the halfway point. If we live statistically, as long as we're going to, we are at that halfway point. And so for what I see for women, but it's not being named, that a lot of women during this transition, again, often change or pivot somewhere in their life
Yeah.
and quite dramatically. And again, show up in a different way. They're often stepping into their own power as they clear away a lot of garbage as we go through this. Because initiations, let's
Yeah.
face it, are not like, it's not la la land.
No,
It can be a little rocky at times.
can be
But
uncomfortable, confusing,
yes,
blindsiding even.
overwhelming,
Hmm.
100% it can. But I definitely think that shift in terms of understanding it as an initiation really empowers us instead of feeling like hijacked by the emotions and the symptoms, it allows us to then step back a little bit and turn inwards and ask what is trying to show up for me right now. And what do I want to show up for in the second part of my life?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about something that I learned through working with chronic pain, which is that if all of our focus is going to the thing that we want to get rid of, or that we're losing and we don't want to lose, the thing we're in conflict with, that intensifies the symptoms. Whereas if we turn our attention toward, what do I want to be moving into? What am I being invited into? That being drawn towards energy um, brings about a whole different feeling in the mind, body, and spirit.
100%, 100%. And there's also like a good body of evidence that shows that how we perceive the menopause and the menopause experience and our symptoms, how it's framed, actually
Yeah.
impacts the severity of our symptoms. Like, how
Yes.
wild is that?
Which, for someone who has been working in chronic pain recovery through mindset and emotional tools, I'm like, well, yeah, of course, that
Right?
totally makes sense to me. I think that's a great lead in to asking you what are some of the specific tools, techniques, or concepts or mindset work
Mm.
that have been most instrumental for you in your
Oh,
journey with menopause and that you love to use with clients?
yeah, great question. So, usually, as I'm walking with somebody along this journey, I usually start, first of all, we do start with the physical. Because again, if a person is wildly deficient in certain nutrients, or there's some deeper imbalances with the thyroid or whatever it may be, and we don't address these foundational pieces, it becomes a lot harder to be present and go deeper. So we first work on that piece, and then the next piece is all about rebalancing the nervous system. And I think how to do that really depends on the person. For me, what was very helpful was both a physical approach in terms of, or a biochemical approach in terms of adaptogens. This is a class of herbal medications or herbal supplements that are wonderfully nourishing for our nervous system and our adrenal glands, which are our stress glands. And what most women don't know is that as the ovaries decrease hormone production, it's our stress glands or our adrenal glands that actually take over.
Wow, I did not know that. That
I
is
know.
fascinating.
I know.
Is that why so many women report heightened anxiety during
Exactly.
this phase?
Exactly. That's a
Hmm.
big piece of it.
Yeah.
Plus, how many of us as women in Western world in our 40s are entering this whole hormonal transition time totally burnt out?
Right.
Right?
And also being told all these negative messages about menopause and about
Exactly.
what our value in society is post menopause and all that
Yes.
garbage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a big piece of it too.
So it's
So
kind
I
of a perfect storm, basically, is what you're saying.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. So apart from that, like for the nervous system, again, it depends. We both know that there's a variety of tools. So for some, meditation can be incredibly helpful and work in that area. Physical sort of somatic therapies can be wonderfully nourishing. At that stage, I'm also honestly going into the work with people, just tiptoeing in about looking at things like boundaries,
Oh, yeah.
how busy is your schedule? Because right in that nervous system space, we want to actually create some space for
Yes.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yes. And that's I mean, it's such a simple idea, but it's
Mm.
such a revolutionary idea in the kind of world that we live in where most of us were raised on this idea of just like work, 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 work and never stop
Right.
and go, go, go and don't sit still.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really difficult to get off of that like
It
treadmill.
is. It really
And
is. And I know, because this is something I work on with clients as well. And something I often hear, I imagine you do too, is, well, that would be nice, but I can't
right.
because of this list of very legitimate reasons. Society isn't set up well for slowing down, especially for women who are mothers, but really for any human being in this world. And I'm curious how you work with that mindset as well as, the particular realities of, but I can't slow down. Like where do you go from there?
Yeah, yeah. So maybe like you, it's more about encouraging people to lean in just very gently.
Yeah.
Sometimes just very small steps of, whatever it may be, instead of like answering emails late into the night, setting a timeline in terms of when we shut things down.
Yeah.
And I often phrase it as like, let's do this as an experiment. Let's just try it for a week and see how it feels, see if everything falls apart. And invariably, people come back and they're feeling better, they're feeling empowered, and they've made that small step and they feel just that little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Um, were there other tools that you wanted to talk about, or does that kind of cover some basics?
Yeah, I think
I'll go
that.
into another question.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think that covers like some of the basics that I use. As I said, like a lot of it is mindset work. I do prescribe a lot of journaling for sure because I find we get
Yes.
into, I know you're big into like the
Hmm.
writing as a way of getting deeper into that
Yeah.
voice inside. So I often use that
Oh,
as
that's
a tool. It's beautiful.
so cool. So I can't wait to get into this next question because what I know from the work I do with clients is that there's all these layers of kind of peeling back some of the pressures, whether it's setting boundaries, whether it's shifting the self-talk from self-talk that's really pressuring and being hard on ourselves to a tone that's kinder and gentler and more accepting. And it's always so fascinating and just kind of miraculous, I think, how when pressure lifts, things that were hidden underneath that pressure that we might not have known were there, that we may have believed were parts of us that had crumpled up and died or disappeared, will emerge like curiosity, desire, um, inspiration, just these miraculous things that are underneath all that pressure. And I'm curious what you see in this realm, specifically with women going through perimenopause and menopause. Like, how
Mhm.
does this manifest in what you've seen?
Yeah, so again, because I work with a lot of women who are like either entrepreneurs or they are in business. So for them, because they tend to be relatively driven individuals, as we peel back some of those layers, I typically see like a lot of their focus for creativity as well as the way they put energy out into the world is often through their work.
Yeah.
And so again, I often find that there is a pivot that happens during this time. So when they're able to feel better balanced and be able to create that space and listen to that inner voice, like there often people will articulate like there's this yearning or this something is pulling them forward, but they can't quite articulate what it is. So as we do the work, that's what emerges and what they
Yeah.
start stepping into. So that's
Ah,
where I see big transitions and transformations. So it's almost like eh, I say, and again, I love the airy fairy. So so
me
it's like
too.
soul alignment. Like
Yes.
as if there is a calling to be doing something in this world, and they're now at a point where they've gathered that knowledge and they're ready to give back in some way and create a
Yeah.
change in this world in some form or another. Yeah.
I can relate to this personally, and I'm just going to share a brief little story. Um, about a year ago, I had been like just really revved up in my business, just like really full of inspiration and just creating all this content and so into it. And then a bunch of stressful things happened during that year, and I hit a patch of burnout, and I thought, maybe it's my drive for the work that I do and my ambition to go bigger with it, like that's just stressing me out. So maybe I need to just pull back and get quiet and get a little humdrum. And, I'm not so young anymore as I used to be. Maybe I should just live a quieter life and that'll balance me out. But that just started to feel more and more and more uncomfortable.
Mm.
And I said I'm going to go off for a retreat weekend, as one does when when one is into this stuff. And it was a retreat called From Midlife Crisis to Midlife Awakening. And
Love
so it
it.
wasn't about menopause specifically, but it was about this life stage. And it was just so awesome because I got to see like this is a common thing at this age. It's like the old way is not quite fitting anymore, and you're not necessarily sure why or what to do. Maybe you should just take a nap and forget about it, but that doesn't really bring you there. And it was just this moment of realignment with how do I actually want to be moving forward with what I'm passionate about and pivot
Mm.
it and readjust it so that it's really um, aligned for me.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. And funnily enough, I just changed a bit of the naming of the process that I take women to. So I talked about like reset with the body and rebalancing the nervous system, and then reveal is all about what is it that I want to do next. And the final stage is realignment, which is the word you just used. And
Mm.
now it sounds like you're feeling like you're much more in alignment with kind of who you're supposed to be at this moment in time.
Yes. Yes. And I find, again, personally, it's like, I don't want to put myself in a box anymore. I just want to be me. Is that
That
something
is
you see in a lot of your clients?
100%, a hundred
Hmm.
percent. And it is so liberating and freeing. And that's why I'm just like so fed up with how we view menopause and midlife for women as
Hmm.
if, like, oh, you're just getting old, you're redundant, just quietly fade into the background. Where the truth is, we're really stepping into our own power at this moment in time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean that kind of like, oh, just fade away. It's really the opposite of what I'm seeing in other women at this life stage. I
Mm.
don't know if there are like any little anecdotes you'd want to give or can give with confidentiality about, stuff that is popping open for women you work with at this stage.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So, one woman that I've worked with, she was working in corporate, and she, at 50, going through menopause, just came home one day and then announced to her husband and mostly grown kids, this is my time. I'm doing what I want to do. And
Yes.
so she left her work and she went back into holistic nutrition. And
Wow.
now she's out there helping other people navigate their health journey and loving it. Loving it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I think that's not an uncommon story, like
No.
shifting toward well-being
Mhm.
and, stuff that's more about health and feeling good at that
Yeah.
stage of life.
100%, 100%. Yep. And then I have another patient who, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. So she's been a counselor for many, many years. And as we went through this journey together, of course, yes, the symptoms were getting better. And she actually, I have to share this. She said to me, she's in perimenopause, and she said, Adrienne, why isn't my story not out there? I
Mm.
feel better than I have in 20 years. I feel
Ah,
stronger. I feel more energized. I feel more grounded. Like, why is this not out there? All I'm seeing is like the huge catastrophe of perimenopause, and
totally.
it's built as something to be absolutely terrified of. So in any case, as a counselor, well, we definitely talked about her hours and
Oh, yeah.
got her to reduce those. And she was like, just the other day, she's like, I'm never going back to doing anything at that level. But
Yeah.
she was so inspired by this menopause journey that she's been on that she went back for training, specific training in menopause counseling. And I must say, she's the very first
Mm.
person I've heard doing this. And there is such a need. And so she's going to be moving into this space, helping other women in menopause with the mental emotional side of it. But there's so many layers to unpack in terms of grief and all the things we've talked about the things that come bubbling up and trying to find a purpose or your purpose in this next stage and processing, the grief of this like so-called loss of youth and then moving into this next stage. So it's phenomenal. And I just picture her out there. She's now going to be helping so many women. And this is what I felt called to do. This is why I work with the women that I work with, is because they're the women who want to go out there and create change. And so
Yes.
by helping one person, I see that woman going out and doing amazing things in the world. So it's so inspiring.
So inspiring. And you said this patient of yours said, "Why is my story not out there?" Thank you so much for sharing her story, for putting that story out there so that that can be an example. I'm thinking of
Mhm.
that phrase, if you can see it, you can be it. And it's
Exactly.
so true. It makes me
Mm,
think about what kinds of roles for women are portrayed in movies and how does that impact us. And it's the reason why
exactly.
it's so important to create more stories, more options for
Uh,
what, we can see and then be.
mm,
Um, and this applies to, again, what I've learned through my chronic pain recovery and work with clients in that area is that listening to recovery stories is such a powerful element of recovery itself. When you can kind of see a full arc of that journey, it's going to be different from your own arc, but you see that there can be an arc, that it's not just uh, the pain point, but there can be this whole arc to the other side of it and an initiation into something new.
Yeah, and you're right. That does need to be out there because when you're in the thick of it, and especially if you don't have the support that you need to help with the physical symptoms as well as the mental, emotional,
Yeah.
so many women come to me and just think this is going to be the rest of their life. It's going to be this horror
Right.
show. And there's so much
Right.
anxiety and depression, like they've lost themselves. But really, although, again, obviously it can be a roller coaster ride for some women, but honestly, it shouldn't have to be for most women. There's supports that
Yeah.
should be out there and accessible to them through mainstream medicine or through things like naturopathic medicine. So that's just,
Yeah.
goes without saying that should be there. But yeah,
That's wild. And it makes so much sense because historically there have been no conversations about menopause. So where's the example to look at? But the idea that that would be forever, it's sort of like thinking that adolescence is how you're going to feel forever, right? And it's a wonderful stage, but it's a difficult stage that, it's
yes.
a good thing to know that there's a passage through into something else. And similar to like a career change, it's going to feel confusing and overwhelming during that pivot point. But it doesn't stay exactly like that. That's a stage along the way.
Yeah, that totally resonates. And for anybody out there, who is a parent or who who remembers their teenagehood, I think we can remember our parents saying, just wait, it gets better.
Right.
But nobody's
Yes.
telling us it gets better. It
Right.
feels like
And we
your whole
need
life
to
blew
hear
up.
that. We
Yes.
need to hear that. When I
Yes.
was in the throes of the migraine experience, I
Mm,
needed to hear that it could get better. And when I heard that, that's when it started to get better, just knowing that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And again, let me be very clear. I just really do believe that we are underservicing and under supporting women in terms of the physical side as well, too. That just
Yeah.
has to be addressed.
Yes, it's all a part of, it's not a one or the other.
Exactly. But again, as I said, my viewpoint on menopause has expanded so much beyond just the physical symptoms. And that's all I'm hearing right now out there is that menopause is only about physical symptoms and
Yeah.
so much more.
And not to put you on the spot, but do you have kind of like a like a future vision of what the menopause experience will be like years from now with your influence and the influence of, other folks who are changing the paradigm?
Yes. I definitely want a future where women are empowered around this, where we are able to talk openly and share about our experiences and the resources, and where we have easy access to get what we need. And that there is a whole shift in terms of understanding perimenopause and menopause for women is a transition period into a time where we do step into our own power. That would be my wish, where it can be a positive and impactful journey and process of transformation. And again, transformations and transition points in our life are not always easy. In fact, they rarely are, but that's okay. When we frame it, like we don't look at our teenage children and say, oh, you're broken. This
Right.
is
Hopefully we don't.
terrible. Yes,
Yeah.
hopefully we don't. Yes. These mood swings or whatever, like
Yeah.
we don't pathologize it. And I'd like to see that shift happen for menopause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing you say women stepping into their power.
Mm.
What has that meant for you personally?
Yeah, a very, very good question, and one I had a little chat about on a walk today where I was meeting up with a yoga teacher who works with a lot of women in perimenopause and menopause. So, stepping into your own power has a couple of different layers. One, there is a real strength in being able to just stand in your own truth and say, this is who I am, and this is what I stand for, and this is what I believe.
Yeah.
And an even greater strength, which comes with dropping estrogen, which, as I say, is such a
Mm.
relief
Mm.
to get rid of that estrogen that tells us
Yeah.
to play nice, play small, and keep everybody knit together. And you
Mm.
can just say what you believe and so many women do, including myself. And initially, we have that moment of like, believe I just said that. And
I
then there's
never
this,
heard this
right?
tied to I was just thinking, well, it's social conditioning, which obviously is a factor, but
No, it's the brain too. It's the hormones
wow.
in the brain. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
The centers that are stimulated in the brain definitely, yeah, impact us greatly. And so again, many women will
Mm.
say whatever it is they believe, have that, reflexive moment of like, I
Yeah.
can't believe I just said that. And then the like, you know what? I don't care. I just said that. I don't care what other people think.
So my brain is just like pinging with like light bulbs hearing you explain that because I'm like, this is so fascinating. Something,
Mm,
I've worked with a lot of women who have migraine because they know that I recovered from migraine. So
mhm,
um, something I've heard many times was, well, I used to have migraine and then they went away after I went through menopause. And I know that that's because they were hormonal headaches, which, hormones are not my area of expertise. So I don't question that that could be a layer of things. But in my mind, I'm like, and you stopped people pleasing because people pleasing is one of the most common triggers for migraine.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
Mm-hmm.
intertwined. It's not one or
Mm-hmm.
the other. They're inextricably connected, mind and
Yes.
body.
100%. 100%. So yeah, that hormonal shift is not, again, so the current viewpoint is that, we go through that rocky time of puberty and then we enter our menstrual phase. And that's when we're really women. And then the hormones drop and we fall off a cliff. And then we have all these terrible symptoms and we're irritable and we're horrible and we feel terrible. And that's the menopause story. And the truth is, hormones, that whole menstrual cycle is about preparing our bodies to be receptive for creating life.
Yeah.
And that's mirrored, whether we have kids or not, that's mirrored oftentimes in life during these hormonal years, that we are often taking care of other people,
Yeah.
we are serving others. And what happens when we reach menopause and those hormones drop is we get to come back to ourselves again.
I got to chill.
Right? It
Yeah.
is so exciting. We come back to ourselves and we
Hmm.
get to say who that person is.
I really can't think of anything more inspiring than that. Any greater reason to do the work that you're doing than that.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that paradigm shift absolutely needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if you had well, first of all, before I go into the final few questions, is there any area that we haven't covered that you'd like to share about?
I'm just trying to think. I don't think so. Beyond, I just wanted to add a little snippet again, just to get people thinking a little bit,
Yeah.
is that again, we view, women's drop in hormones as like somehow like again, like a catastrophe, and this is
Right.
leaving and everyone's deficient, right? And
Oh, it's
again, I'm
total
not
gloom and doom talk. And
right.
that's, it's like, oh, yeah, a positive thing. We're talking about menopause
Yes,
now. But most of what
yes.
I hear is just doom
In the
scrolling
yes,
about menopause.
absolutely, absolutely. And all the talk around like a hormone therapy. And again, I'm not against hormone therapy. Women should use the tools that work best for them.
Yeah.
And that's the part I wanted to get back to, is about symptom reduction versus treating root cause.
Yeah.
But the thing that I was going to say is that when the hormones reduce, we often paint this as a woman as being deficient. And that is the messaging I see out there. You don't have hormones now, so you should go on hormone therapy or whatever, it happens to be. But we never look at pre-pubescent girls as somehow deficient.
Oh, gosh. I never thought of that. That
Right?
is such a great way to look at it. Yeah.
They're perfect the way they are,
For that life
even
stage.
without hormones.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
appropriate for that life stage.
Exactly. Just as it is appropriate again,
Right.
yeah, for this life stage as well too.
Oh, that's a
So,
great way to contextualize.
yay. Yeah, yeah. That really, again, that paradigm shift I really think helps. And so the one other little piece that I wanted to mention is, again, we touched on this at the beginning, but that is through my menopause journey and how I treat my patients is looking sort of deeper at whatever imbalances may be going on. And again, there's so much research that shows things like, certain eating certain ways, like a more Mediterranean, like more fruits, more
Mm.
vegetables, etc., diminishes symptoms. Meditation diminishes symptoms. And again, you have to ask, those things don't change your hormones. So why are
Right.
symptoms reducing? Because
Yes.
we're healing our body and our nervous system so our body can
Right.
cope with the change in hormones. It can
With the
adapt.
transition. Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can adapt to this transition. So, by focusing on those sort of underlying things that need strengthening and supporting, is when we can see symptom reduction. And
Mm.
so I also feel the same is happening in terms of like the mental, emotional, and metaphysical side of menopause too. This is a time where all sorts of symptoms can bubble up. All know like the emotionality and we blame it on hormones, but maybe even if we just view it as like, what gets me upset? Is it like having to load the dishwasher when I asked my husband to load it earlier and I'm raging?
And my people pleasing isn't online anymore.
Right? Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, what is this telling us? Is there certain boundaries that need to change? Is there certain conversations that need to be had? That also
Mm.
comes bubbling up at this time and is an amazing opportunity to start healing some other aspects in our life, not just physical.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're talking about how the narrative that's been around for a long time is that the drop in hormones is wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and the drop in people pleasing is perceived as wrong by, the kind of societal ideas that we've been drenched in. But that doesn't mean that we have to view them as wrong.
Yes. Can I share with you as we end like this quote that I heard today? And hopefully I get it right. Um, So the images of a woman looking in the mirror as she's going through this transition. And the problem is that you're not broken. It's the mirror that's broken.
Yeah,
So we really need to change that mirror
big time.
and what we're holding up as to be expected, to be normal, that needs to change.
Big time.
Yeah.
You've given us so many nuggets of gold here. I don't know if there's one more because I have one of my final questions is if there was a soapbox message that you are most passionate about spreading through this work that you do, what would it be if you haven't maybe said it already?
I think in all honesty, I've said it already, but I'm happy to say it again. And that is that the menopause transition is more than just about physical symptoms. It is a transition, a transformation, an initiation, a catalyst moment in a woman's life on a physical level, yes, but also a mental and emotional, and for some, a spiritual level as well. And it is our opportunity to do the work so that we can step into the next half of our adult lives in the way we want to and show up in the way that feels in alignment for us.
I'm so grateful that you said it again because it needs to be heard again and again and again. We've heard all this gunk and junk about menopause for so long that we need to hear this message again and again. So thank you for putting it so succinctly and clearly. Um, if there is someone who was listening to this conversation and they are at the beginning of their menopause journey or they're at the beginning of uh they've been in their menopause journey and they're at the beginning of like how do I navigate this in a way that feels better, um but they've heard a lot of things and they're like, I don't even know where to begin. Do I pick up a book? Do I go to see a specialist? Like, where do I even start? What words of encouragement would you give to that person?
Yes. Um, well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that it can be really difficult, and a lot of women feel very alone in this. A lot of women feel very disempowered as they talk to their family physicians about what is happening and are very much dismissed. I would say that if a woman is really struggling with symptoms, and again, it can be so catastrophic for some women that for sure starting with a trusted health professional, whether that again is a family physician or a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine practitioner, I think definitely getting somebody on side. And if your doctor is not willing to listen, then we need to look to see if we can find another doctor who is more specialized in terms of helping support women during this transition.
Thank you for
Mhm.
that.
My pleasure.
Adrienne, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom on menopause and on life with me and with this audience. It's so needed. Um, where can people find you and what can they reach out to you for, whether it's now or upcoming in the future?
Yes. Well, I'm on Instagram and TikTok under Dr. spelled Dr. Adrienne .nd, ND for naturopathic doctor. And I also have a podcast as well too, Mastering Menopause and Midlife. So if you're interested in a bit more of this conversation, you can definitely find me there as well too.
Fantastic. And what can they reach out to you for? Are you working with people
Mhm.
one-on-one? I know you've got some group stuff going on. What does that look like?
Yes, yes, yes. So definitely I see people one-on-one, although that's only in my jurisdiction, which is in Ontario, Canada, based on licensing regulations. But I do group work as well as having a Mastering Menopause course, which is all about how to get on top of some of those symptoms. So feel free to DM me and I can tell you a little bit more.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to connect with you again, and I look forward to staying connected.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Anna. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.